Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the steel cruisers. I'm going to compare them and give you the order that I would personally get these ships in. There's only 4 this time, unlike the battleships, so it'll be a little bit quicker. I also think some of these ships are just a lot simpler to describe, so this video might be a little shorter. As always, remember that these are just my opinions. If you're enjoying a ship that I rate poorly, doesn't matter, right? Just continue to enjoy that ship. My opinion should not impact your fun and enjoyment of that particular ship. But I am giving out these rankings based on what I personally enjoy and which ships I would get first if I was to be grinding steel and looking for cruisers specifically. So with that little disclaimer out of the way, the last one I would get is the Vallejo. I probably wouldn't even get this ship at all, to be honest with you. This ship is just not really that good. It lacks in DPM, and that's really its job. This ship is an American light cruiser that lacks a radar. There is no option to take a radar here, so you are down on a lot of utility for your team. And for losing that utility, you don't even gain DPM over Seattle, which is the other tier 9 light cruiser, the tech tree one. The ship does get some nice shell flight times though. The velocity looks very similar to a Worcester, which these are Worcester guns, but they just don't lose the speed at range. So flight times are much better to range. They have less shell drag or crop value, something like that. There's some weird hidden stats that affect that kind of thing, but just essentially it means we do have better shell flight times to range. That allows us to use this fast cooldown spotter plane much better. This is the gimmick here. We have a fast cooldown on this spotter plane that allows us to farm a lot easier in these higher tier games, of which you're going to find a lot of your games are up tiers. As a tier 9 ship these days, well, you're gonna see super ships. And certainly a lot of tier 10s. Tier 9 matchmaker is not the best these days. I suppose another benefit to the Vallejo is that it is the cheapest steel ship by quite a margin, being I think the only tier 9 steel ship. So if you're on a bit of a budget, I guess, and you want to get a steel ship, sure, but I would definitely recommend saving up more. This ship has not very good armor. The deck here being 38 is pretty nice, to be honest with you. But just look at how big this ship is out of the water. Most of the shells are going to hit you here. The other problem is you have just a gigantic citadel that is not well armored at all. 102 millimeters is nothing, and it's very big. There's no chance you're going to get overbends through it. You are just going to get one shot very quickly. I found myself oftentimes losing just a lot of HP to battleships where you need to play further back. And at least you can with that spotter plane, but it's just not enough. I found myself losing a lot of games, and while I could do some damage, I just found myself not having any sort of battle impact. Sure, I can farm battleships, but I'm not even all that effective at doing that, and really lacking on that ability to impact those DD engagements early kind of sucks. So our hit points are just fine for this tier, it's okay. But what really makes this ship difficult as well is our poor maneuverability. It looks fine here, 6.4 second rudder, reasonable turning radius, but that includes giving up concealment for steering gears mod 2 here, which is a pretty rough trade-off for a light cruiser. We would love to have concealment, allowing us to get into better positions easier without being spotted, go dark sooner, that kind of thing. Propulsion mod is also a must. You might think to run just normal steering gears here and then concealment, but the problem is this ship also accelerates extremely slowly. It is very sluggish. So I found myself really needing propulsion mod and then also requiring the help of steering gears. So we do lack on concealment. You could build for more concealment on the commander, certainly, but then I found myself really lacking on damage. So I really wanted to make use of top grade gunner to try and fix our not great DPM. That also means we're taking IFHE because we want to be able to pen 32 millimeters of armor. That's the major threshold here. Combining that with heavy HE, you got decent alpha damage, and the damage does rack up better. I certainly found myself having better damage games with this build than running a full concealment build, but it still lacked the battle impact for me personally. Superintendent here giving us 4 heals. Notice there is no super heal here or anything, so you have a big, squishy, not great maneuvering light cruiser without any special healing to help it out, so it can die rather quickly. Just not a fan of this one. Fairly negative in this summary, certainly, but just really didn't like it, and isn't worth the steel, in my opinion, as steel is a very, very premium resource, difficult to get. So Vallejo is going to be the last possible one to get, and honestly wouldn't even recommend getting it, even if you had all the other ones. Up next, we have the Plymouth. This is the second last ship I would get, and really one that I personally don't have on my main account yet, and I don't think I'm going to get it. After playing it again this update and this year, I still don't think it's quite worth getting for me personally, but I think that's down to me not enjoying the British light cruiser playstyle as much. I think Plymouth being a worse version of a radar or smoke Minotaur makes a lot of sense considering it gains both of those consumables, right? So you don't have to choose. We talked a little bit about comfort in ships with the Mini Gumo, but a lot of other times I talk about how it's more comfortable to have good detection and good gun range. It's the difference between your gun range and your detection that gives a ship some sort of comfort to play. There's a lot of ways that a ship can be comfortable to play, but another one is, of course, consumables. So not having to choose between a smoke and a surveillance radar is excellent for a British light cruiser here. It allows you to have a lot of utility while retaining the safety of a smoke that also can allow you to farm and rack up quite a bit of damage. Unfortunately for the Plymouth, you don't get a super heal, so that's a bit of a downside on this one, but having both the smoke and radar, smoke being more of your survivability here, while retaining that utility, I can get behind that. I think a bigger issue, though, comes down to trying to use these guns. The DPM is certainly much worse than a Minotaur, but that's to be expected given the extra consumables, I think. The problem here is the turret angles. You're essentially giving yourself like Kerr-first level turret angles when you try and use all four guns. And in a British light cruiser, well, you know what that means. Of course, you're going to explode. So again, another light cruiser with a large, very hittable citadel above water means that it's going to take quite a bit of damage, especially if you're trying to use all your guns. You can get blind fired and smoke pretty easily. I will say one positive about this citadel is you don't have this raised section here to deal with, so that isn't your citadel. For example, if we just look at Minotaur here real quick, notice how it just goes up here. Much bigger, easier to hit citadel. However, Minotaur does have better turret angles and can use more of its DPM, which is better at a better angle as well. So you're giving less broadside, even though this is a much more hittable citadel. And combined with the super heal, I do think Minotaur is just a little more survivable than Plymouth, at least when you're taking the smoke build. Of course, you lack some battle impact, though, when you don't have the radar, so that is a positive here for Plymouth that I do want to point out. Unfortunately, you do have worse torpedo power, since you're only going to have one set of launchers per side instead of two. So not the biggest deal, to be honest with you. It's not like cruisers are often going for torp builds or anything like that, but it is still something to consider. And especially now that we have Brisbane, which is an HE Minotaur with longer range radar and longer range torpedoes, that one can use its torps more, as well as using a radar there as well. It's pretty powerful, but that one doesn't have a smoke, right? So then you're lacking on that smoke screen to provide some sort of safety there. As far as maneuverability and concealment, it is a British light cruiser, so you have extremely good acceleration. Doesn't stop very well, but good acceleration, as well as okay rudder shift and turning circle radius. These ships can be quite difficult to hit when you're maneuvering, especially at medium to longer ranges. Your concealment is excellent at 9.2. No stealth radar here, but it's pretty close. And of course, if you're going to look at the rest of this playlist that this video is in, you're going to see that in those Plymouth videos, I managed to get some radar activations on DDs just by pushing a cap early that has some sort of island cover to prevent battleships from being able to hit me very easily. And then pushing that cap early allows me to essentially just get a free radar on the DD. And that can result in a lot of extra damage. So even though this ship isn't for me personally, I can still see why it's a good ship and potentially worth picking up for steel. But it is third on the list for me personally. As for the build here, this is what I was using. Going with radar mod, maybe not needed. It is a pretty long duration radar. For 9-kilometer radars too, if you haven't killed them by 50 seconds, I mean, they've probably escaped your radar range anyway. So maybe not necessary, but I'm taking it anyway. Steering gears here, of course, don't really have any other options. Concealment, and then main battery mod 3. I don't think it's worth going range mod here. Shells are just far too floaty to really go for that. And you'd rather be using your concealment to push up and get better positioning than trying to farm from more extreme ranges to try and play a little safer. As for the commander here, this is what I've gone with as well. So concealment, of course. Top grade gunner is essentially an 8% reload buff when you're radaring someone, which is nice. Allows you to kill them a little bit quicker since the gun reload isn't amazing. 5.7 seconds is not great. Keep in mind you do have 16 shells instead of the 10 found on a Minotaur, so you can't directly compare the reloads here. It is different, but still, you do lack DPM compared to a Minotaur, so getting top grade here is kind of nice. Also adrenaline rush for that reason. Our consumables are a main focus of the ship. That's one of the benefits, is getting those two consumables, smoke and radar, so we may as well enhance them and get them back as quickly as possible here. Also, superintendent is nice for that heal, because again, no super heal on this thing means we're gonna be burning some of those repair parties to try and stay alive, certainly. So I think that's it for the Plymouth. My opinion on it, it's a decent ship certainly, but not for me personally. I'm not going to get it on my main account even after playing it here. Now, on to the top two here. I want to stress here that both of these ships are very, very strong here at the end, and they are much closer than the gap from 2 to 3 and 4. I think these two ships here, Stalingrad as well as Austin, are both extremely powerful, and are the two main steel cruisers that you're going to be looking at. For me personally, both worth getting on my main account, and that's why I have both of them. But Stalingrad falls to second place, and I'm a little surprised by that, because Stalingrad's kind of been my default recommendation for a steel cruiser, the first steel cruiser to get, and it's fallen. And I want to talk a little bit about why. I think some of it comes down to my past perception of Stalingrad. I've had this ship for a very, very long time, ever since it came out. And this ship used to have something called fire prevention, right? That is found only on battleships now. And this being a rather large ship with not good concealment, you can get burnt down rather quickly in this ship. Considering the playstyle of this thing, you do want to be either bow in or stern in. You got to pick one. You're not going to really swap between them all that easily, thanks to this large, very easy to hit citadel. Above water, not that well armored as well. This ship takes a ton of damage when you're broadside, so you want to be angled in this thing thanks to its really, really nice armor here, 50 mil plating on these, as well as an icebreaker. Very, very nice here, and with propulsion mod, you can do a lot of speed juking here. Staying angled like this can be a great way to play. On top of that, you do have a 12-kilometer radar here, which is really great for battle impact as well. These guns are laser beams, amazing, amazing accuracy, as well as damage output from them. Slightly improved pen angles on the AP means you're just crushing cruisers. It's very, very strong guns. But considering your concealment here and the tendency to get caught bow into HE spam means that you got to play a little bit more careful in this ship. And so sometimes, especially in the video of this ship of me playing it this year, yeah, it was a little rough for me playing this thing. It died a little quicker than I was used to, and I think that's just kind of how this game is now. It's a little harder to play some of these bigger ships bow in, and so that means you want to maybe consider starting kiting, started turning away. But then you're lacking battle impact. As soon as you do that, you're not getting as much value out of your radar. That's going to be a way to survive to the mid to late game, where you can still be a very dominant force there. But we can get some blowouts that don't really account for that all that easily. Can be annoying. So Stalingrad I found just not quite to be as good as I remembered it being, and maybe that's why it slipped down. Maybe for a newer player who's just getting this ship, it's going to feel like that all-powerful battle cruiser that just smashes everything with these amazing guns, and you're going to love it. I think either way, this is a pretty strong ship. Even if I am slightly disappointed in it these days, it's still very, very, very powerful. The other thing to consider is Petro is in the game now, and sure, that ship has finally got some decent nerfs to, especially concealment most recently, to make it a little bit easier to spot and a little easier to farm down, but still, Petro is so much smaller than this ship, harder to hit, means it survives a lot longer. Better concealment means it can push up to areas of the map that Stalingrad really can't. Stalingrad would get farmed down a lot easier than the Petro would, And just because of that, I think Stalingrad also has kind of fallen in my ranking a little bit, just because Petro seems to do this, but a little bit easier when it comes to the concealment. And sure, the guns aren't as accurate or punchy with the damage, but they still can hit pretty hard. As for the equipment here on this ship, I think this is a pretty general build for it. You certainly could run range mod. I know that sounds crazy, but with 20 kilometers of range, it should be fine. But given how passive some games are and the lack of concealment here, and not that it's squishy or it doesn't have good survivability, but you can find yourself getting pushed out of games even with 20 kilometers of range. So you might need to try that. I certainly found myself getting a little frustrating at times, and I think I went to range mod and kiting initially in one of the matches and just spammed HE, and I got like one of my higher damage games while playing this ship for these 2024 recommendation videos, which was a little frustrating because I want Stalingrad to be this AP punching ship that is really nice and consistent. And then one of my better games was range mod HE spam kited to the back of the map, which is not a playstyle I really enjoy all that much. Not a fan of that. So Stalingrad, I may have had a bit of a rougher time with it, and that's also affecting my recommendation. Here's just kind of a normal build for it, I think. You do still want Gunfeeder to swap between them, because the HE's not bad here either. Decent fire chance, decent damage as well. And the dispersion combined with your shell velocity means it's pretty good at hitting destroyers in that as well. Turret traverse can be a bit slow, so running grease the gears here. You can run any of the 2-pointers, but I just kind of threw priority target on. You could run consumables enhancements to get that radar up a little longer duration, since it doesn't last all that long these days. But honestly, it really doesn't matter that much which 2-pointer you go for. I think you definitely want Superintendent to get more healing as well as another radar. It's very useful, as well as Concealment Expert here. Double concealment, and it's still only 14.2 kilometers of concealment. A lot of battleships these days have much better detect than that. Yeah, it's kind of rough. But top grade gunner is going to give us that extra reload most of the time anyway. And I am going for survivability expert here. Just want more health, trying to stay alive. But you know, you could go more damage or something like that instead. Adrenaline rush always going to be good. But that's Stalingrad, man. It's a good ship, okay? It's a good ship, but I found it just a little bit disappointing playing it this year. So it does fall to number 2. And that, of course, leaves Austin to be my most recommended, my favorite steel cruiser in the game right now. And I think it can honestly just be summed up with how fun this ship is. I don't think it's as meta-defining as Stalingrad. I mean, you're not going to be running this in any sort of comp thing, really, compared to a Stalingrad. But it's just fun. This thing is fun. I had a really, really good time playing Austin for the most part. And I had a frustrating time playing Stalingrad. So even though both of these ships are extremely powerful, I think that's just the easiest way to sum it up for me, is I had fun playing Austin rather consistently, and I had a somewhat frustrating time playing Stalingrad rather consistently. And so because of that, Austin's got to go number 1 for me. Rather surprised by that going into this list. It would have looked very similar, just with Stalingrad first, then Austin, and then wave back from that would be Plymouth, then Vallejo. Kind of surprised that Austin took the number 1 spot, but that's how it goes, man. This thing is a ton of fun. This ship, of course, more than any of the others on this list, is reliant on a gimmick, and it's a very particular gimmick. Very special one. It's unlimited reload boosters. So you can use these as many times as you want to in the game. Of course, it does have a 105-second cooldown, but you don't have to worry about running out of reload boosters. Combined with sap shells means this ship just melts anything with less than 36 millimeters of armor. So destroyers die instantly. A lot of cruisers you can kill outright dev strike with this, as well as battleships. You can take easily 40 to 50k chunks off of battleships just with one reload booster. 15 seconds and you've taken 50k off a battleship. That's very, very powerful. And the reason that you have to play this ship so differently, it's not going to be a sustained damage farmer. It is a burst farmer, right? It's looking purely to get the most out of this reload booster, and that's it. So you're gonna have periods of downtime. You're going to use this good concealment to get into positions to make use of the sap as well as the main battery reload booster. Your reload kind of sucks without it, to be honest with you. 6.6 second reload on 127s. Like, That is not good. That is not good at all for a tier 10. But with that reload booster, of course, it's very, very, very powerful. You also have surprisingly decent torpedoes here as well, 10.5 kilometer range, and they do 19,000 damage. Go reasonably quick too at 66 knots, so it can use some torps to do a little bit of zoning as well. Not the main gimmick to rely on, but it is nice to have. It's reasonably quick as well, and reasonably maneuverable too, which is nice. The other really wonderful thing about this ship is that you have this 32 mil plating on your armor. So this upper belt here means you can auto bounce anything up to 457s, including 457s, but 460s from the Yamato will overmatch this. But as soon as you're against 457s and below battleships at close range, you know, at longer ranges, the plunging fire is just going to get you. But at closer ranges, you can angle a belt like this, and you shouldn't get citadeled, because this should just auto bounce for you. You might think that, oh, they'll just overmatch through my bow to citadel me. Well, sure, we'll hit here. And this won't be angled enough to auto bounce, so it'll go through this plating. But look very carefully. Notice how the citadel here is going to be completely protected by this angled plate here that starts about like this. That's the special sauce here that Austin has. At close range, you can brawl battleships and do really well. Not always. It's very dangerous still. If you slightly miss angle, you're one shot. You're just dead. But you can play around with this, and you can make it work. You could also consider just going broadside, because the just sit broadside onto a battleship at close range tech certainly works here. These citadels are small enough, just barely this one, that the battleship is just going to overpen you, and they won't do any citadel damage. The only way to get a citadel on a broadside Austin at like 5 kilometers is you have to hit the water. As a battleship, you have to hit the water just before the ship, and that's hopefully going to slow the shell down enough that it still pens the citadel, but it doesn't go exit the other side of the ship. Yeah, it sucks. I hate that it can happen like that. It's really annoying when it does as a battleship player, but as an Austin, you have that option as well. And the other reason it is so scary doing that kind of thing in an Austin is your HP pool. Yeah, 35,000 HP, very easily the worst HP out of any of these ships we've taken a look at here. So one wrong move and you die very, very quickly here. You don't have a super heal either, so even though you have 5 of them, which is nice, you can just outright die before you get through these heals. It's very easy to just overextend and die because you're going to be greedy for this reload booster. Once you've tasted a few of those boosters that just nuke a DD or a cruiser or take 50k off a battleship, you're going to be hungry for more, and you might push it a little too hard and then die very quickly because you overextend. I certainly found myself doing that as well. It's an addicting booster, man. You got to be careful with it. But it's fun. It is very, very fun, and I think that's why this ship has to be the #1 recommendation for me. It's pretty good, but most importantly, it's very, very fun. Here's a build that I would be running on it, something like this. This consumable specialist now giving us back that reload booster quicker. Very, very nice. That is our gimmick. Demo expert, fine. You know, sometimes you will want to use the HE. You can't use it as easily on angled targets, the SAP. So the HE can do all right. You can light some fires, especially if somebody's damage control to fire. Theoretically, you're gonna get some permanent fires. Go watch the Austin video though. Yeah, a Montana damage controlled fire from me, and I popped this booster after his damage control immunity time went out, and 0 fires for the entire booster. Pretty painful when that happens, but that shouldn't happen. Unlikely, right? 11% fire chance. It shouldn't happen. Heavy HE here is just free. Heavy HE and SAP buffing both your ammo types. Since these guns are below 149 millimeters, we don't have that concealment penalty here attached. It's just straight up 10% damage buff. May as well use it. Adrenaline Rush, always going to be useful. Superintendent giving us more healing is the main reason here. Survivability Expert giving us more health, definitely required here, as well as concealment. So we do lack a top grade gunner, but this is more for sustained damage output, I think. Really here, we're just looking to get to that reload booster. That is our damage. That is this ship entirely. So we want that to be as good as possible. And that includes concealment, getting into better positions, and also just trying to survive long enough to make use of that booster. So that's the list. That is the steel cruisers done for 2024. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know in the comments below what your list would look like. Which one would you get first, and why? For me personally, Austin is just too much fun. But Stalingrad is a very close second, and really just comes down to being a little bit of a frustrating ship to play for me again, and Austin just being so fun. Plymouth is close to being worth picking up for me personally, but not quite. I don't think I really want to spend the steel on it for me personally on my main account. And Vallejo is a very distant last place because I don't think that ship is worth picking up at all. So thank you very much for watching, and before I go, remember that it doesn't matter what anyone on the internet says. If you're enjoying a ship, you continue to enjoy it. That's all that matters. Playing a video game, it's all about having a good time, of course. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.